Hi friends and fellow artists, or anyone that started off looking for a quick portrait drawing tip and has just realised they spent the last 2 hours on YouTube. Stick around for a little bit longer, at least to the end of this introduction. Welcome to this portrait drawing lesson, where I'm going to be showing you how to draw a profile portrait, so that's side-on view from observation. So no tracing, no grid, no rulers, no measuring devices. Now you probably already know that portraits are about the most difficult subject matter that you can attempt to draw, especially in terms of getting a strong likeness. Profile portraits are definitely more forgiving, not least because you've only got to worry about one eye and half a mouth, but it's also easier, I think, to see shapes, both the positive shapes of the facial features and the negative spaces between them. So if you've not had much luck trying to draw a portrait from observation in the past, definitely give this one a go. Take your time and don't set the benchmark too high. Getting that perfect likeness, that's not your benchmark. Aim to create a face that is well proportioned and believably human. If you can do that, then it's not too much of a stretch to then start aiming for stronger likenesses. Don't be hard on yourself. Remember, portrait drawing takes a lot of practice, and the differences between a really strong likeness and a poor one is very, very small. For example, look at these two portraits of Marilyn Monroe. For the one on the right, I've digitally moved the features ever so slightly, again, just millimeters, but look at the difference. So don't be hard on yourself. Portrait drawing takes practice, lots of it, and the difference between a poor resemblance and a very strong one is really, really small. As you can see, I drew this on a toned piece of paper, so I chose a tan color, but any mid-tone will work, or you can follow along just as well on a plain white piece of paper. And that's because this lesson is much less about the shading and rendering side and much more about the laying. The shading is probably the easy bit. So I'll put the materials that I used and the reference photograph in the description below, but really all you need is a pencil and a piece of paper. Finally, I've been challenged by my 7-year-old son to get more subscribers than someone called Mr. Beast. I'm not too far behind, so if you could nudge me ahead by hitting the subscribe button, assuming you like this lesson of course, that would be very much appreciated. All right, enjoy the lesson. Remember, portraits are tricky. It's all about practice, and this lesson is a great place to start. First things first then, and something that never changes regardless of what style you're going to go for. Before you pick up a pencil, think about compositionally where you want to place your subject on the paper. Now you can't see it, but just behind the iPad, the paper actually extends probably to around about there. I've just brought them a little bit closer together just so it's easier for you to make the comparison between reference and drawing. But I'm going to place the head or the face on this side of the paper, and there's going to be plenty of blank space, breathing space on this left-hand side. Compositionally, that's a really good idea. Whenever you've got a pair of eyes that are looking in one direction, place lots of breathing space to that one side. The photographer's done it in the reference material. I'm going to retain that in the drawing. So I'm going to be holding the pencil. I know you've seen this before, but it's worth stressing. I'm going to be holding the pencil right towards the end for the majority of this first stage, this layout. That's going to help me keep things loose. It's going to help keep the pencil moving. It's going to help me feel my way around the drawing as opposed to being a little bit more stop-start. Get me out of that methodical mindset. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to think about where the face is, and all I'm doing at this stage is just putting in a nice curved line, just representing the front of the face there. So the hand is going to be somewhere around here. So this is all I'm placing it in at this moment in time. I've got the chin that's going to come somewhere around here. Top of the head and the headwear is going to be here. And now I can start thinking about facial features. So I've already looked and noticed that the eyes, in terms of the top and bottom of the head, although I know we can't see the top of the head, but if you imagine just behind the headscarf, it's going to be somewhere there. The eyes are falling slightly above halfway in this pose. So they're going to be somewhere here. This eye is going to be somewhere here. I've got the nose coming out here. Pipe is going to be here. So look at the angle between the eye and the nose there. So I'm trying to go as quickly as I can, but these things are going on all the time. I'm looking at these, trying to make these observations all the time. So looking at that angle. Now I'm looking at the distance here. So remember distances between features. This shape here
is the whole shadow shape of the eye. So I haven't tried to draw in, you know, this small eye, the top eyelid, the bottom eyelid. I'm looking at that as a whole, looking at the distance there. What's the angle like between this nostril and the eye there? So we've got the pipe, which, looking at an angle, mine probably needs to be a little bit flatter, but it's not too far off. Got a bit of an angle there for the chin. Now look at this space here. What's that negative space like, that abstract shape? So this shape here between, that's made between the thumb and the chin. Okay, let's use the beard as a good landmark and reference point. So it's quite a flat angle down here. Now I'm looking at the distance here. So what is that distance relative to the eye distance, the size of the shadow? Let's say that's a little bit greater, greater a distance than the width of this. So the beard's quite thin and then becomes thicker, comes under here. We've got the rest of his headscarf there. Now I'm looking at this as an abstract shape. So this here comes into the beard. So this point here, I'm noticing that this is on line with the eyes. So I'm just looking at these major angles, not thinking about curves or individual contours, just want to look at big shapes, straight edges wherever you can. Okay, so let's go back over and start making some more checks. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm looking at. So I'm looking at this as a straight line. I'm looking at the angle of that. I can see that mine needs to be a little bit flatter. This is a series of straight edges. Okay, so how do I feel about that shape there? How does that look? So this is an abstract shape within here. If I was to take, there's a bit of a line there, you see this crease here? Imagine if I was to take that line and extend it up and look at that as a shape. What is the size and the width of that shape? Does it look about the same? Look at the break point here. So we've got this curved line and then it sort of goes to a double contour there. So you've got this dip. Where is that in relation to this line? So probably needs to be a little bit lower on mine, maybe coming from about here. I don't want to get too detailed, so I'm not taking my own advice there, getting a bit too detailed. Zoom back out. Now, where does the upper lip, where does this crop out of the nose, out of the nostril? So it's, if you look at the width of the nose, it's maybe a little bit towards the left. So I either need to shorten the nose slightly or I need to extend this out here. Where is this in relation to the eye? So if I take this curved line up, that goes into the curve almost of the moustache. But what I'm looking at more so is where is it in relation to the bottom of the nose? So I could take a plumb line up, look at how it cuts through the nose there. I can compare it to the eye. You can't make too many comparisons and too many of these checks against other reference points. You know, if it marries up with one correctly, it should marry up with them all. Okay, so looking at the slope of the mouth, so there's more of an angle to it than I've got it there. I can extend this line. I know that's too far, but extending the line prevents you from making marks that are too short, which is what you'll typically do more than making them too long. So this crease here, I think it's the nasolabial crease. So this crease here then creates this shape. So we can put the moustache in as well and further break that shape up. So look at that shape now. Does that look correct as a shape? How does it compare to the size of the nose there? Let's look at this little, I think it's a bit of a crease or a wrinkle just beneath his eye, so we can place that. The distance, is that okay? It's about the same distance as this. So that distance there is about the same distance as there. Okay, moustache, how far is that going to come down? Come back to that. Quick angle check. So definitely needs to be a little bit flatter. And it's not going to matter, you know, if his pipe is at a slightly different angle than what is on the reference photograph. If I put it slightly flatter or steeper, it's not going to matter. It's just good practice to make the observation. I've got the thumb, which if I look at the distance between the chin, this abstract shape again, now this needs to come out more, doesn't it? Got a little bit of the lip showing there. Straight edge, so I see that as a straight edge. Another one. Okay, let's just re-establish the line of the beard. So look at the distance here. That tells me that this moustache is going to be somewhere about there. How does that shape look? I think this is maybe a little bit too much distance there, isn't there? So this might mean that the whole chin's a little bit too long. Okay, so back up to the beard that's going into his hairline. Okay, so mine's a little steep, isn't it? So let's have another go at that one. That's probably more like it. And then we've got the ear, which is going to be here. Look at the angle between the nose. So there's a definite slope to that. So I've got it far too high up. And it's take a straight line across, it's actually on line with the top of the mouth. So ear is going to be somewhere around about there. Really easy adjustment to make though. Okay, we can put all of the various creases and folds in the cloth later on. That's not the important part. So let's look a little bit more detail at the eye. So I'm going to put this eyebrow in here because that's a relatively easy shape to put in. Let's see if we can get a few more refined angles in there. So I've got a straight edge. You see a straight edge there? But it's got an angle to it. So I look at that one. And then I've got an angle there. And then it goes into the forehead, which is a little bit straighter than I've got it. Okay, so this is important, this bit now. The eyebrow, how far into this line does it go? Getting any closer. So how far into this does it go? So it's not coming all the way over here. It's not going running into the nose. There's a distance between that. And that mightn't seem like an important detail, but that is going to affect any lightness that you can get because it's telling the viewer that the eyes are quite close together otherwise. So let's just tidy this bit up. There we go. And then for the eye, let's look at this eyelid. Where does it come out of this shape? So this is a line here, not this shape, but this line here. Where does it crop out from there? So it's right here. So now I've got this shape here that helps me define this line a little bit better. So I'm not happy with that part of the upper eye there. I think it needs to be a little bit higher. So now I can put this shape in, and now that feels like more of an accurate shape compared to this one. I've got the eye that I can just about see. Bit of an eyelid showing up there. So this little shape here. I've got the eyelashes that are coming out. Okay, then for this one, this eye here, let's look at the distance and the angle between these two. So eyebrow, I would say, is somewhere about here. And then it's got this definite shape to it, so there's a dip. And then comes down to there, that's sort of an angle. Try and keep this to straight lines if possible. So that's all getting quite dark in there, which means as long as I get the outer edges right, when it come to do the shading and the rendering later on, it's not going to be too important to get all of the details too accurate within there. As long as I get the outside shape and the size correct, and that's going to be the most important thing. So just looking at that line there. So when I place this line, I now need to think about this distance here. And don't forget, because I'm zooming in and zooming out, and you'll be the same, you know, if your reference photograph is a different size, whether it's printed or on the iPad, if it's a different size than what you're working at, you can't make this check relative to here. So the distance, these two sizes here is about the same, but if I'm working at that size, I can't now say, is this distance the same as that one? I have to make checks to other things within my own drawing. So I can look at this distance and say, how much bigger is it than the width of this little eyelid here? If we look on the reference, this distance here is significantly bigger than this, maybe even twice as big. So that's probably about right. It looks about right, comparatively speaking. And then within this, we've got the eyelid. So let's look at the position of this eye relative to this one. You see how there's a very definite angle to that. So I've got to make sure when I put the eyelid in here and the eyelashes, what do I think about that angle? I don't think there's enough of an angle there, which means one or two things. Either this eye is in the wrong position, it's too high up, or this eye here, this left-hand side one, is too low down. So I have to make a decision about which one I want to move. I actually think this one is in a reasonably good position. I'm confident relative to the nose and other things, and I'm confident about that because of the distance here. So look at the distance between this feature and this little feature here. That looks like a good distance relative to the nose. I'm looking at this here, the bags under his eyes, the circles under his eyes are going to be somewhere here. I don't think there's much I can really change about the position of this relative to the nose, which tells me that this one is out. So I'm going to erase that one, and I'm going to make some more checks. One of the checks that I can make is if I draw a plumb line from this eyebrow down to the bridge of the nose. Let's look where it intersects. So it intersects around about the height of this eye. If I do the same thing, bring it down here, it's actually intersecting on the bridge of the nose at least quite a bit lower, isn't it? So it's intersecting somewhere here, and then when we draw across, it's coming through. So maybe this needs to be slightly deeper, this eye needs to be slightly deeper, but this eyebrow certainly needs to come out further, which is going to then take the forehead out. Okay, so that eye is definitely better. Let's just move this one down slightly, get rid of that shading as well. I'm going to step back from that and just make sure I'm completely happy with it. Got this little marking as well. So these creases, one thing advantage you do have with older faces is there's a few more lines, a few more wrinkles, and they just act as good landmarks. They help to break up big areas and big shapes. Okay, so I think it's getting there as an initial stage. I think he certainly has got a good chance of looking human, which again is the objective, the first objective for this course anyway. But I think with a little bit of refining, we can get quite a good likeness. Let's just have a go at blocking in the hand as well. So I know it's not a portrait, it's not a face, but it's an extra little bonus. If we put the thumb in, first of all, I want to get an approximate size and angle. So just putting that in as an oval just to represent that shape there. And then whenever you're drawing hands, the nail is your best friend. Whenever you're drawing fingers, I should say. So if you get the nail in and you get the nail on a good angle and a good size, it's very easy to then build the rest of the finger around that nail shape. Top of the pipe there, so I'm just looking at where that is in relation to the thumb. So for this finger here, I'm just going to again look at angles, so approximate size and angles. We've got the top of the finger and then we've got this angle here, looking at that shape there, the nail on the top. Take a little step back, take a look at your portrait that you've got at this stage. You might be happy with it, you might be happy that it's enough of a likeness and it looks, you know, human enough for you to then begin shading. I'm going to take just a minute or so just to look over a few things. I'll come back and tell you what I've spotted and we'll make those adjustments and then move on to the shading. So I've just taken a minute or two just to look over things. There isn't anything that I'm too unhappy with. If anything, this eye is maybe a little bit small, just looking at that in comparison to the nose, but that's something that I can address when I come onto the shading. Now, if you want to go for quite a loose style, quite a sketchy style, and I think this would work really well in a loose, sketchy style, then I wouldn't do anything, I wouldn't erase anything back, I would work on top of those marks, using a darker, softer pencil to strengthen where there's the dark shadows within the eyes, within the bottom of the nose, adding a little bit of shading, maybe a bit of cross-hatching for the skin. I think that'll work really quite nicely with the marks that you've got down already. I'm going to do something that's a little bit more refined, still going to keep it fairly sketchy, but a little bit more refined. And I think with the addition of the white marks, I want to have a relatively clean paper surface in and around the beard area, just so those white marks really stand out. So I am going to use the kneadable eraser and just go over everything, just so that the marks remain enough that I can see them at least. And then what we'll do is start to strengthen everything with the darker carbon pencil. So a good sharp point on the pencil. Let's start with the eye. Zoom in a little bit so you can see that more easily. And I did say that I felt I needed to make the eye a little bit bigger in comparison to everything else. So just looking at where this eyelash is going to come out to, so I can get this further outermost mark. Still doing some observational checks, so looking at this angle down to the crease in the nose and the kind of shape that would leave with the bridge of the nose. So all these visualization processes that are going on. So it's always the eyes that I think most artists would, even when they're doing loose sketches, would take a little bit of care and time over. You can't get too sketchy and too sloppy with the eyes. All very shadowy in there. Okay, and then we've got to look at this shadow. Comes down from the eye. And then I'm just going to block all this area in. There is this light piece here, so I'm going to try and avoid that one. But this area, even though there's different lights and darks, or different strength of shadowing in that area, I'm just going to block it all in as one. this shape I found was really helpful just as a landmark. So I'm going to get that back in as well. So there's some lights and darks and highlights within that. I don't want to get bogged down too much with those. I just want to look at the strong shadows, the strongest shadows. Get those in. I'm just trying to leave a little bit of light there for the paper surface where I can see it. And then this area here is much stronger, isn't it? But notice how this little portion here is darker than this, but it's not as dark as this. So I'm going to have to add extra layers to the darkest areas, even with a dark carbon pencil like this. Don't worry about getting them as strong as you possibly need to right at the beginning. You know, as you progress with the drawing, you'll be able to come back and strengthen values as you notice that they're not dark enough. So just hold at the end of the pencil here, just so I can make some lighter hatching marks, just to show that this isn't a stronger value. Just gives you a little bit more control. Bridge of the nose there, so I can just re-establish the tip of the nose. So let's get the strong dark of the nostril in. Got that crease line down there, and then I can then start looking at this shape here. So really dark for the nostril, but then you can see a little bit of the nose that goes under, but of course that's in dark shadow as well. Okay, let's look at some tone across the nose, bridge of the nose. So you can see this is a shadow. You see that shape there? It's a shadow. And even that shadow, even that shape, is not one solid value. So I will show you in a moment. But if you just block it in as a solid value for now, and then we've definitely got a darker edge around here, and it's definitely darker underneath. Look how dark that area is there compared to that area. That's something that you see if we make this black and white. So let's use the trusty iPad presettings. There we go. So hopefully you can see how that area defocus your eyes. Notice how that is quite a bit darker than that. And you've got, this is a little bit lighter than this. So refinements that you can make later on, but you can start to build them in to your shading, even at the very earliest stages. Okay, so just adding a bit of tone here. So this is a good point here. So this fold it's quite tempting, I think, for a lot of people just to put this in as just a line, a solid line, but it's not a solid line, it's almost a block. If we can really zoom in, so there's just a block of value there. So it's not this thin edge line, it's quite a soft line over the top. Okay, so I'm going to put this eye in now just to get the balance between the two. So I think about where the eyelashes come out to. Take a point down right through the centre of the nostril. So I'm a little bit too far out there. That's why you've got to keep making these checks. And the trouble with a carbon pencil is they don't erase particularly well. So eyelash is going to be more here. Bridge of the nose. And then we've got the dark of the actual eye. Okay, and then we've got this eyebrow in here, and even though it's only just a little small area of dark tone, it's a really, really important one because it tells the viewer what the width is between the eyes there. There we go. So I've got a little bit of dark tone between the two eyes, and this is just, again, these little patches of and dark areas of value, they're just useful as landmarks, just to help you judge distances. They break shapes up, create more abstract shapes for you to see. So by all means put those in whenever you see them at an early stage. That will just help you with the drawing process, just establish and firm up the earlier line drawing that we've done. Okay, so I'm just now continuing just to move around the drawing, just in this area, just spending a little bit more time in this area, because after all, this is the most important area. The nose and the two eyes is the most important area to get right. The rest of it isn't going to have as much of an impact on the likeness. And I'm just looking for things like, look at this shape here. So how does that shape look compared to that one? So I'm creating the shapes by adding this tone down, and then I'm also looking at the strength of the tone as well. So look how it needs to be darker coming off of this crease. So darker here, see how it's dark around here, and then it lightens off. So I'm looking at that kind of thing as well. So this shape around here, it's just got some darker tone just around the bottom of it that creates that bulbous sort of shape. And then we've got a little bit of tone around here. We've got this light highlight here. We could maybe put that in with the white pencil a bit later. Okay, I think if we start to address the area around the mouth. So first of all, let's just get the shape of the top lip back in. So just looking at the angle of that mouth, it's maybe one of the things that I could have improved from my initial line drawing. So I've got an opportunity to do that now, just with a little bit of extra observation. So this lip I'm just going to draw all the way through. That gives me a better feel for the shape as a whole. And by putting that mark in there, then I can put this lip in just with a little bit more authenticity. There we go, and then the pipe. Let's just get the line of this pipe in. So there's a nice little dark shadow. I don't know if you can see that just here. See this as a shadow here? But right on the edge, you've got this little bit of reflected light. So we can put that in with the white pencil, but what you don't want to do is take this shadow shape right up to the edge. It's a small detail, and yes, it's not going to make any difference if you get it, if you miss it, you know, so don't worry if you do miss details like that. But if you can observe them, it's things like that that add up to create a bit more of a wow factor even into your drawings. Now this whole area, look, if you defocus your eyes, look how much darker that is to say this area or this area here. So apart from that little area of highlight there, what I'm going to do is just give myself an idea of where this moustache finishes. And then all of this area up to the beard, say there, put this in really quickly and quite dark as well. I'll just try and keep that edge a little bit scruffy, a bit untidy, because that will help to define the texture of the beard. I've got this nice dark area, see this dark area here? And if you can get dark values next to the really light ones, it really helps the light ones to stand out that much more. Do a little bit of cross-hatching in there just to help bring the value up. And a little bit of texture into your mark making as well. It's always nice. Same around here. I'm just going to bring some of this value just in to break the edge of that shape up. That's going to help us when we come to do the white tone in a minute. So darker, darker, darker around here. So let's start putting in some value on the rest of the face. So I'm going to start getting a bit quicker now, starting with the forehead. So I'm happy that that is about the line of the top of the headscarf. There is a shadow under that. So it means I can just put it in as a stronger line for now and then come back and soften that off in a moment. But this area here, if you just defocus your eyes and look how much stronger that is comparative to, say, this area. And there's a line there, isn't there, where this is in shadow, and then we've got a highlight there, bit of a stronger tone again, and then another highlight. But if we look at where that line is there and take that up, so what we can do is, side of the pencil, just block this area in. So I'm just being careful, just to maybe keep this little bit back here, just where there's a highlight. Darker here, definitely darker around here. And then, see how it's a bit of a darker value just around there. So what you're doing is you're ignoring all of the details of these frown marks, and you're just looking at the value of that area as a whole. That's much more important, even if it means that you lose a little bit of the details, you know, with this, because you can't erase them too well with this. If you're using a carbon pencil like me, you're not going to be able to erase them too well. But even if it does result in you losing some of those details, you'll always end up with a better drawing if the large blocks of value are correct, as opposed to them being incorrect, but you're having all the details in nicely and, you know, nice and accurate, nice and neat. It's not the details that make the drawing, not in the first instance. So side of the pencil again. What you'll notice as well is that because I'm using the side of the pencil, the mark making becomes a little bit more even. And it might be that towards the end I want to put a few hatching marks within this, just so that there's a continuity with, you see some of the more obvious pencil marks within these areas. So just to bring up that continuity, I might put some hatching marks in there at the end. But what this is doing, these softer, more even marks, it's helping to create a greater focal point around this area. One of the, not rules, but one of the principles of good composition, or of any composition, is that whenever you've got more texture and more individual marks, it's more attention grabbing. And so it's better to put that texture within your focal point. Okay, so look, even though we've got some lighter hairs around here, I'm just ignoring the fact that there's light hairs there, and I'm putting the value in. And what hopefully will happen is that when I put the white over this, it's going to blend with some of the dark colours underneath, and that then is going to create a muddy grey colour instead of a white colour, which is what we want, because these are going to be darker greys within here, mid-tone greys. It's only the bright whites, the lightest bright whites I can see around here, so that's just the area that I've reserved. In fact, not around here, so just if you can see where there's a shadow here, you see that area of shadow? So this is bright white here, bright white hairs, that is an area of shadow. So side of the pencil, we can put that in. This is really dark. So defocusing my eyes quite a bit here as well, just so I can see what's the overall tone and value around here. So I can see that this is a mid to dark grey around here, but within the body of the beard there, we've got some greys in there, but we've got quite a lot of these bright whites. So that's why I'm just going to reserve that area just for now. I'm going to add some in between the whites, but I think it's important to get the whites down first. So I'm spending a lot of time defocusing my eyes here, and each time I do, I see another little shape. So just seeing that little shape there, if you defocus your eyes, you'll see that as well. You can see this needs to be quite a bit dark around here. I think it needs just a little bit more tone just on the bridge of the nose there. So all I'm doing is I'm just trying to keep the pencil moving, but defocusing my eyes a lot, looking at one area, comparing it to another. Does it need to be stronger? Does it need to be a little bit darker? So let's put some of the details into the forehead frown lines, these wrinkles here. The mistake that you'll see a lot of people make with textures and shapes like this is they'll just put them in as these lines, and really that's what you do when you're drawing maybe cartoons or illustrations. You outline things. Got this dark one in here, so look, let's put this in, not as a really strong punchy line, but just softened off towards the edge. So you can see how there's shadow here. So you've got the strong line, bit of a shadow edge to soften it off, and the highlight occurs just before it. So just softening that edge off, and it runs into this shadow area. So with those in place, let's just strengthen the shadow underneath. So I'm just softening the area. So like I did with that one, you're just softening the line, softening the area to prevent it from being this harsh line, just on one side, so the top in this case. That's where the shadow's forming, on the top there. So I think now is as good a time as any to do a little bit of work on the beard. So I'm just trying to break up this line here that I'd drawn in the beard, just breaking it up, try and make it a little bit more scruffy. And then nice sharp white pencil, and let's see how this looks. I'm going to start with the brightest whites that I can see. A sharper point will give you brighter whites as well, by the way. So I'm going to put individual hairs in at first and just see how long that takes me. Using the real tip of the point as well will help you get stronger whites. It really allows you to push the pencil into the surface. Just do the odd fleck just within the shadow areas. Nice little highlight just under the chin. Okay, a few around here. So I'm just going to carry on. Compared to the rest of it, it's a little bit of a slow process. What I'm going to do is just carry on in this area around here where the beard is at its whitest. So just building them up just with these short, sharp strokes. And what I'll do is we'll come back in, because I think if we had some darks with the graphite pencil, a carbon pencil in this area, those darks will really help these whites stand out. When I get to this area, by the way, so any shadow areas, I just want to allow the white, see how it's blending with the grey, and just creating more of a blending with the black of the carbon pencil, so it's creating a bit more of a muted grey. That's going to just give this sense that that area is in shadow. So build up the tones here, put the odd fleck in this area around here, build up these here, and then we'll come back in and add some darks. Okay, so you see I've put in quite a few of those hairs. Only took about 5 minutes, actually, not as long as I thought. And what I'm going to do now is just pick out a few little tones just in between. So I just want to take away the colour of the paper between some of them, particularly in the darker areas. So you can see in and amongst these are some quite dark patches, dark areas. And those dark little spots will help the white of the hairs stand out that much more. So this is probably actually going to be maybe a little bit more time consuming than putting the white of the hairs in, but I think definitely well worth it. So just notice how, as you get around this area, that the value in between the hairs is softer, isn't it? It's a lighter grey, and it's around this area that you get the really dark ones. If you just try and keep the pencil dancing around as well, different types of shapes, so you don't want anything that's too uniform. You can do the same in the moustache as well, so let's just take some dark areas through. So I'm just really gently touching the pencil around this area. So I don't want anything too strong. I don't want to disturb the white too much. Just gently touching the pencil around this area, but then around here, maybe just picking out some more definite darks. And if you feel you lose too many and you want to do another layer of white, you can do just a quick layer. So nice sharp point on your pencil. While you've got the white to hand, are there any subtle areas of highlight that you can bring up, just to add in with the white? I think the key with this is just to keep it fairly limited, not go overboard. So I'm just trying to make individual strokes here rather than blocking in large areas. I only want to put it on where I can see the lightest highlights, so it's easy to go overboard. and you want to try and avoid that. And then what about if we just add in a little bit of white for the headscarf? So again, just where it's the brightest areas, I think compositionally, I think this will look quite nice. I'm going to keep this quite loose and impressionistic, so just give an impression. Don't want to have to put all the folds in. I'm just going to put an impression of this pattern in. I'm not going to put this in with any detail. I can't really make it out anyway, but just some, I think some nice dark tone will help to frame the face. So just a few hit and miss marks, looks like some kind of, like a branch or leaves or something. There's a few little spots and freckles, a few age spots and freckles I think would be a nice little addition to this. I'll just put those in again, just sparingly, not all the same strength, you've got some darker than others. So I think all that's left then is to do just a little bit of work on the hand and the pipe. So let's just put in this white area first so I can see how it looks like it's got a square edge to this pipe. So we've got a highlight edge just down the top, one just above the top of the thumb. So let's put that in. And then got this part of the pipe which is lighter. So just put a little bit of white tone in for that. And then around the hand, let's get these dark, strong values in first. So around the thumb. So these marks here, I'm just trying to make these in the direction and the line of the actual face, so it just helps to describe that it's a square shaped pipe. And then the top we can do in this direction. Let's put that shape in with the white. This has been a nice change of pace from those first 3 lessons, but of course it's that methodical approach that we covered in those first 3 lessons, the all-important observations, the core principles that allow you then to take a looser, more free, more flowful kind of approach to your drawing. Don't feel that you have to cover that first stage, that initial laying out, as quickly as I did. If you need to stop and maybe use your little cardboard measuring tool just to make some checks, by all means go ahead and do that. You don't ever have to get to the point where you take this more fluid approach. You know, if it always takes you a little bit of time to just lay the groundwork and get the features in a solid place, it doesn't matter. You can really enjoy and get stuck into the second half of the drawing, the shading, which typically is what most people tend to enjoy more anyway. You can really get stuck into that with confidence and some excitement, knowing that the layout is all your own work created purely from observation. So please add your renditions of this one into the art tutor galleries. I'd like to see this on different coloured tone grounds as well. I think that'd be interesting. I'd like to see it on just a plain white piece of paper with a soft pencil to see what that looks like as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing those. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. I hope you've enjoyed the course as a whole, and if you're feeling really brave, why not go and find a reference photograph of an older gentleman or an older lady that's either front on or 3/4 on and have a go at that. It's tricky, it's very tricky. It's about as difficult as any subject matter that you're going to come across. But you've got absolutely nothing to lose. So I hope to see you in another course soon. Until then, enjoy your drawing, enjoy your portraits, and thanks for watching.